Chris, thank you very much indeed. And good morning, everybody. We're going to be looking in this session about the impact of the Silk Road, what it's all about, what it's all for. The Silk Road could really start a new phase in globalization. But what are the opportunities that are opening up for business along these routes? Well, joining me to discuss that, I have Taleh Ziadov, who is the Director General of Baku International Sea Trade Port in Azerbaijan. Also, we have Dr. Yu Jianlong. He is Secretary General at the China Chamber of International Commerce. And Kanat Alpsbayev, who's Vice President for Logistics at Kazakhstan Railways in Kazakhstan. And actually, Kanat, it's you that I'd like to start with, because to get an idea of the scale of the changes in Kazakhstan, more than 2,000 kilometers of new railway lines have been built over the last 20 years. What's the overall plan? What is the thinking behind all of this? Because by building all of this, you are sort of sending out quite a strong statement that you want Kazakhstan to be a route through which trade passes. Is that fair?
Well, first of all, what's the driving point for all these activities which we're doing with the region? Of course, if you look on the global map, the driving points is trade, and which is required to move the goods from the west to east and vice versa. And of course, from the Kazakhstan perspective, to create a transit hub, it's very important. And basically, the government and president of the country give a lot of attention to that. Regarding to the region development, there is two big initiatives which was initiated first of all with the head of the China, the program called One Belt, One Road, and also the Kazakhstan initiative, recreation of the Silk Way or Silk Road, and to create the Kazakhstan as a transit hub. And there are two main components which we are taking consideration. The first one is a hardware or infrastructure components which require to build up sufficient infrastructure to provide the right services and to organize the transportation. In Kazakhstan, for example, as you mentioned, during the past 20 years, the country invests a lot to develop the railway infrastructure. Basically, we build up more than 2,000 kilometers lines. And also the government and president of the country give a lot of attention to develop also another type of transportation, like automobile roads, and also the seaports on the Caspian region, and terminal businesses within the country. So all this aspect is relating to create the right infrastructure.
Yanlong, I want to just pick up on this idea of the One Belt, One Road. It seems to me that we've been talking a lot about just how many routes there are from China to the west, and indeed up towards Moscow, and it's more of a map of routes rather than one road. Is that policy, was that perhaps a misnomer? I mean, we're talking about a variety of trade routes in the area, right, really, rather than just one line that goes through from China to the west? Dr. Yu, do you want to answer that?
You're talking to me?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for this question. I think, the China One Belt, One Road initiative was initiated in 2012. And this has aroused a lot of concern among the, both political communities as well as international business communities worldwide. And people did not know about this initiative at first, but nowadays becoming increasingly popular. And there have been a lot of discussions about the construction of the One Belt, One Road initiative. I think this initiative is very important for China because, China, in terms of politics, China has very close relationships with all the countries in this region. And, most of these countries in the region are developing countries, and China, whereas it's the largest developing country in the world. And in the past, these countries supported China very much in the international arena and vice versa. So there's a lot of things that we can share with each other. And in terms of economy, because China has become the largest trading nation in the world and has become the second largest GDP in the world. And at the same time, China has a lot of surplus industries where the production capacities are no longer used inside China, which can be relocated to countries in the Central Asian areas or the countries along the Silk Road. So there's a lot of things that we can do with each other. And
what
infrastructure.
specifically are you thinking about when you talk about relocating companies and relocating sectors? Which ones are you thinking about that would work well in Central Asia?
Well, I think for sectors such as iron and steel, garment manufacturing, shoe manufacturing, and computer software, all these things could be relocated into the Central Asian areas. And also in terms of infrastructural developments, because the backward of infrastructure in the one road, one belt region is quite backward, relatively speaking, compared to other parts of the world. So it's kind of bottlenecks for the development in those regions. So that's why China is trying to, encourage all these countries to connect with each other. In terms of connectivity, we build a lot of, railways and roads, so as to make the region connected with each other, so as to boost prosperity in the future. Because in China, we have a saying that if you want to become rich, you have to build roads first. So when you're connected with large cities, with the ports, or with the airports, and then it's possible for you to get rich and transport your goods outside.
Tyler, just to bring you in here, we're talking about trading routes. Obviously, if Central Asia remains simply a trading route from China to the West, there's limited ability for the countries along which that route those goods pass to actually grow. It's more about trying to make Central Asia into a hub as well as simply a route.
Correct. We are sitting in a city which is a hub of the 20th century, which is Dubai. Obviously, we are discussing a Silk Road, an ancient Silk Road, which made tremendous trade and brought a lot of opportunities to the countries of Eurasia. But to understand the Silk Road, you have to understand the notion of the economics of the Silk Road. And economics of the ancient Silk Road was really about hubs, as you called. Hubs are not just about routes. It's a place, megapolises, where value adds had to happen. So historians record that, old caravans that with camels, they traveled about 40 kilometers a day. So every 40 kilometers you had to stop to feed your animals, to rest. So every 40 kilometers, there was some sort of what we call caravanserai. In the modern style, it's probably a motel of 0 star. Basic amenities, not much. Every 200 kilometers, you had slightly larger caravanserais, which served a little more. Hotel of 3 star, maybe. And every 500 to 1,000 kilometers, that's what the action took place. These were megapolises. Baghdad, Samarkand, Bukhara, Merv, Istanbul, Aleppo. These were large megapolises, were the hubs of Eurasian Silk Road, where the action took place.
Can I just come in there? Because, of course, these days, you don't need that. I mean, it makes perfect sense when you look at it in a historical context that you would need these staging posts along the way, and indeed that's how the Silk Roads grew up historically. But today, the kind of train network that's being built by the Chinese and in Kazakhstan could take those goods, if they do come by rail rather than by ship, all the way from Beijing to Poland or wherever they're going next, or down towards Dubai, without ever having to stop. So how do you make this value added? What do you do?
Obviously, competing with the ocean liners is very difficult. The advantage that we have, being in the middle, is obviously the time and value add that you are going to provide in between. So I'm not really interested as a Port of Baku in Chinese goods coming and going through. I would more be interested in opening that container and doing last-minute assembly on the site and then re-exporting it whether to Iran, to Russia, to Turkey, to Central Asia, to Europe.
So you're going to compete with Dubai?
For sure, but Dubai is obviously serving a different market, and we are placed to serve the entire Central Eurasia. And that's, I think, has larger scope of events, political, economic, geopolitical impact, because then it is going to create a win-win situation, meaning that I would be very much interested to making sure that Kazakhs, Turkmens, Georgians, they also develop their ports and their roads, their infrastructure, so that I myself, being in the middle of this development, also thrive and flourish. So this win-win concept actually pushes us closer, making sure that we harmonize our both customs, taxes, infrastructure that is going to be in place, but certainly we, as kind of drivers of this transformation, we see ourselves to becoming a hub of hubs in Central Eurasia, because we are not just a port. We are a port, a free trade zone that is going to be developed around this new port in Baku, and a small satellite town that is going to come out of it. Similar to, in a way, the concept of Jebel Ali of 30, 40 years ago, as it started.
I do want to make sure that there's plenty of time for questions from the audience. There are two ways that you can do that. You can either ask a question on the iPad or on the apps that hopefully you've downloaded, or you can simply stand up and ask a question from the podium. So in a few minutes' time, I will be asking for questions from the audience. If you want to ask one that way, do just raise your hand. I have got a question here that's been sent in, and we have touched on this already, but it's the question about seaports. Obviously, a lot of the goods that are coming out of China, India, and elsewhere are going by sea at the moment. As a railways man, how do you compete with that?
Well, from the price wars, we will never can compete with the sea deep operation, but we can bring the value for our customers. And definitely, when we're talking about providing the transportation service, it's very important to say that it's not only just transportation. We need just to provide a really logistic solution. And if you compare how can we create the value comparison to the deep sea operation, definitely it's one of the advantages for the transcontinental route is the speed of operation. For example, we operate from one of the Chinese city, Chunxin, bringing the goods to Duisburg, and operation takes about 12 to 14 days. So, and distance is more than 2,000 kilometers by the railway line. Recently, we started operation and have done the pilot train from Iwu. It's another city of China, bringing the goods to Tehran, Iran. So the total distance was about 9,500 kilometers, and operation takes about 14 days. So all this aspect is the speed of operation. Of course, it's bringing the value for the customer. And when we're discussing about that, we're just looking on the life cycle of the products and how can we squeeze the entire cost and just looking for entire business cycle or product cycle operation. And transportation is playing in more and more significant role. And currently, we try to combining the different type of the operation as really multimodal, multi-logistics operation is not only railway. If you look on the different type of the services which we're providing. For example, there are some challenges which we're working on that. The issue with the different gauges. For example, China and CIS countries and Europe, it's a different gauges of operation. So it's required to provide the right transshipment on the border. On the same, we develop on, for example, Trans-Caspian route, which go from the China to Istanbul, and the involvement of the operation of the Caspian Sea and we're working closely with our colleagues from Azerbaijan just to prove the smooth operation. So, and when we're talking about with the customer, there are different aspects of that and of the requirements. There is not only like deep sea operation, but also some of them doing the air freight operation from east to west. And definitely railway or combination rail to air or something like that could really provide the, good services and to be competitive. Another challenge I would like to add something. It's a really to put the balance of the east-west and vice versa operation. Currently, we see that kind of disbalance, which just say that we bring in more goods by the rail from the east to west.
Sure.
And it's a difficult subject, and with development, how to balance that. And when we balance that, definitely the price we can push low on the operation. And it requires a lot of additional services. For example, to use the temperature control containers, which allowed us to operate during the hard winter season in Kazakhstan, but also give us ability to attract some kind of new traffic from Europe to back to China, for example. It could be pharmaceutical products or food products, which also just put the balance and can reduce the price. So it's really continue the story and operation that, which is we creating the multimodal services for customer and try to provide the services between East-West and vice versa.
We're getting a flurry of questions in now, and Dr. Yu, I wanted to come to you. We've talked a little bit about some of the concrete evidence that we're seeing that the Silk Road is working already. But tell me a little bit more about the impact that you see the Silk Road as having currently on the region, but going forward, what is the role that you see?
Well, I think after China initiated the One Belt, One Road initiative about 2 years ago, there have been a lot of Chinese companies going out, making a lot of feasibility studies about the investment environments in different countries along the Silk Road. And some Chinese companies have actually made investment in some of the projects in those countries, either in construction, infrastructural developments, and also in transportation and energy construction. And actually, China, according to some statistics, from January 1st to October last year, Chinese companies made a total investment of $13 billion in 49 countries and regions along the Silk Road, which was up by 36.7%. That was a very fast growth rate compared to previous years. Not only Chinese companies are making investment abroad in the Silk Road regions, at the same time, we have to realize the fact that the Silk Road countries are also pouring a lot of money into China just to establish joint ventures or wholly foreign-owned ventures. And according to the same statistics from January to October 2015, the Silk Road countries invested in over 1,700 projects in China with a total investment amounting to 6.5 billion RMB US dollars. That was also a growth rate about 14%. So this One Belt, One Road initiative has actually strengthened the relationships in terms of business between China and foreign countries and the Silk Road countries. And I think in the future, more and more Chinese companies will make inroads in the Silk Road countries, and the more and more companies from the Silk Road countries will come over to China for business and joint ventures. And there'll be a lot of Chinese investment in those countries.
Tala, I've got a specific question there that's been coming from the audience for you about which products and destinations are export opportunities for Azeri businesses from Baku?
Obviously, this project, as I have described, is not for Azerbaijan alone. Azerbaijan is 10 million. Yes, it is 85% of the economy of the South Caucasus. But if you are creating a hub, you are creating it for the region, for the larger region. And that larger region obviously includes Russia, Iran, Turkey, Central Asia. What this region is rich is really oil and gas and a lot of raw materials. We have not yet come to the point when the downstream of the petrochemical has developed enough, although quite a lot of investment has been going into downstream, particularly in Azerbaijan. Close to 25 billion is going to be invested into petrochemical industry. Turkmenistan is investing heavily. So all the what we call the feedstock that is going to come to the market, it is better to be utilized not far from its supply places. So our idea is to utilize some of this feedstock that is going to come from the region in our site, so that a production and factories could be located not from far from its destination markets, meaning if it is Europe, if it's Iran or Turkey, you would like those factories to be located in Baku and then use this raw material feedstock and produce their final goods and ship it to their final destinations.
Do we have any...
Andrea, may I go back to the question about rail? Because this is,
sure.
I think, quite an important question. A lot of focus has been on ships and airlines, and this rail is something in between, and a lot of people are confused what is going to happen with the rail. But I think the future is really about intermodal transportation. Very few people probably know that Europeans receive their iPhones first through Kazakhstan, because it's the fastest route to get their iPhones. So the question that you posed was regarding what sort of goods could be transported through these roads. Obviously, two types of goods. One, those that are time sensitive, and two, those are high value adds. Sometimes these both are the same, but also perishable goods, for example. This region is full with agricultural goods that are perishable. You could as well set up a logistic business in the region. The container that came from China to Baku arrived in 6 days. If we bring a container from China to Baku, it will not come in less than 30 days if it goes through ocean line. So it is a very competitive route when it comes to time. And I think in time it's going to be also close to very competitive prices when it comes to prices as well.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? If we do, it's a little bit difficult for me to see, but do just raise your hand, and or else just go actually to the podium and you can ask a question there. I do have quite a few questions have come in on the iPad, and I do want to ask a few more of my own, but I think it's worth probably putting this to you, Kanat. It's a slightly difficult one, because I know that you're not really, your railways are not port, but as recently as a few weeks ago, one of our audience is asking, there were significant delays from the Kazakh port of Aktau with trucks going from west to east, and they got stuck there for administrative difficulties. What's the government doing? Because, I mean, clearly, in order to make this work, it must be smooth. And these kind of delays really will not help the Silk Road.
Well, the question is relating to the operation of the trucks. It's come up on always political escalation between Russia and Turkey, when the usual routes, when the, for example, Turkish drivers or Turkish truck go through the Russia and reach the Central Asia, and regarding always political escalation, the drivers has the difficulties to go through the Russia territory, and basically one of the routes is go through the past the Caspian Sea from Azerbaijan and reach to Kazakhstan and go back. First of all, one of the aspects which is we are looking at in development, of course, is the infrastructure in the port of Aktau. The current operation is a requirement just for the improvement and investment, and we creating the second port, Kurik, just which has allowed us to increase the capacity of this kind of operation. And definitely we just back from Baku when we discuss with our colleagues how can we improve overall operation, and definitely it requires not only just both ports, Aktau and Baku, but also the involving the shipping line operation to provide the sufficient assets and just to support that.
Come in, please.
This is quite relevant because before I arrived in Dubai, a first Deputy Prime Minister of Kazakhstan was in Baku. And the reason why he came to Baku is to look at the processes that were set up in Baku, and because he personally was on this issue to make sure that all these issues with delays on the port side in Aktau has been resolved. And I can tell you firsthand that we interviewed random Turkish trucks, and all of them said that the current delays, or used to be delays, in Aktau has been resolved. Most of these delays, obviously, there were delays, for example, 6 months ago in Port of Baku as well, but most of these, they were bureaucratic. And it is very important that the political leadership of the country puts forward their political will to sort this out. And in Azerbaijan, obviously, this has been done 6 months ago by setting up a transit council, and the president himself made clear that all transit goods through Azerbaijan have to go smoothly. And due to this political will, we actually sorted out a lot of issues. And today, for example, a truck, either Kazakh or Turkish, would enter and be ready to board within only 2-3 hours, which wasn't possible last year, for example.
Dr. Yu, we do have a lot of questions coming in. I would like to get through as many questions as possible. I've also got a question from the floor. So, sir, if I could go to you first, please. That microphone should just be on, so I think if you speak...
Yeah, my name is Sharaf from Sharaf Group Dubai. My question is, Mr. Kanat, what are the prospects for the private sector to invest in the railway infrastructure in the country? Thank you.
Well, currently, the government of Kazakhstan announced the big privatization program where the investors can participate, and you can get the list of the companies which is put on privatization. And this is big list, and basically one of the key points that the government opened for the private investors to come on the rolling stock, specifically to invest on the wagon freight operator, and also for the passenger operators. Also, we are looking just to get potential investors involvement not only for the railway sector, but also for another infrastructure, transportation, for example, on the terminal sector. And we are welcome investors to come to invest and to develop logistics zone, industrial zone on the border with China. And also there are some activities around the countries which you're talking about to invest and create a specific free economic zone, which has allowed us to use some benefits from the taxation perspective. And I can provide the list for you if you're interested, detailed list. Of course, there are some opportunities coming up, definitely.
Dr. Yu, we have quite a few questions on China, and for time I might try and roll a couple of them into one, actually. I'm being asked about the return goods that you expect to see from some of these Central Asian countries coming back into China. But also there's a question from one of our audience that says that we're observing that China-based businesses are less interested in international reach and expansion and more focused on their internal market. Can I ask you about those two things?
Can you repeat your question, please?
The second one is about the fact that China, some of our delegates are observing, is less interested in international reach and international trade and more interested in supplying its internal market. So if you could just give us a flavor of both of those, please.
Well, China is an open economy. It trades very heavily with the outside world, not just, trading internally. And I think the largest trading partners of China at this time are the United States, the EU countries, Japan, and China is trying to step up the trade relationships with countries in the Silk Road region. Mm-hmm. So in the future, I think there will be more and more trade that be done between China and the Central Asian countries and the Gulf region countries as well.
And what are you looking at in terms of what those CIS countries might be providing China that would go back east in terms of goods and services?
Well, for the CIS countries, I think actually they can act as a kind of agent between China and the European countries. because the CIS countries know China more. You know, we've had a lot of connections in the past, and we had very close relationships with each other, and they could possibly, you know, utilize their, resources in China and export the goods via their services to European countries. And in this way, they could act as kind of bridge between China and Europe. So this is what I think at this time.
Kanat, I wanted to talk to you specifically about one of your rail routes, and that is the railway from Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Iran. And this is a new route. What effect is it having on trade and transport of goods?
Well, this route is just was recently opened. It is purely railway operation, and the line is existent. It's under operation. Right now, we're trying to justify the potential cargo growth, which we're discussing with our vis-a-vis in Iran or in Turkmenistan. And of course, the Persian region itself, it's becoming more and more important. For example, we can see the different initiatives. For example, currently was announcement like Azerbaijan Railways signed agreement with the Russian Railways to bring the goods from India through Port Bandar Abbas and to use in the railway. Definitely, Kazakhstan is also initiative the same kind of activities, and the potentials which we can see, it could be to increase the operation up to the 500,000 TEUs per year. Right. And the magnitudes for that, it's of course the trade. We're looking from the different perspective. For example, we opened the Iran for the trade. There are a lot of interest from the Russian producer of the steel or grain to use this railway to do the trade. And also we can see the potential from the Iran to bring the goods to Kazakhstan and Central Asia. So right now for us it's very important to work with our colleagues in Iran and Turkmenistan to set up the smooth service, which is very important for the customer. And also it's only from the infrastructure perspective, but also from the cargo operation perspective. So it should be sufficient number of the wagons, loading, reloading activities, etc. So I think that the magnitude of the trade will support these activities on the transportation by using the railway specifically.
And Tala, from the Azerbaijani perspective, the opening up of Iran is providing you with opportunities, presumably, as well. Can you give us an idea of the scale of them and what your thoughts are going forward for that relationship?
It is going to be a game changer, obviously, the opening of Iran. And being a neighbor just nearby and actually between Russia and Iran and close to Turkey and Central Asia is a good opportunity. Geographically, by default, we are in a very good location. But one of the strategic projects that we are looking at is really what Kanat mentioned, is to link Iran and actually Bandar Abbas all the way to Helsinki. And right. As you know, in the north-south direction, there are multiple ways that you can travel. And one of them that goes through Azerbaijan to Russia. The missing link that exists is between Rasht and Azerbaijan-Iranian border, which is about 120 kilometers of rail. And as you know, the rail that was just recently inaugurated to Kazakhstan is there. But to travel between Helsinki and Bandar Abbas is most cost-effective and faster if it goes through Azerbaijan on the western border. What Azerbaijan has decided to do is to extend an 8-kilometer of the missing link to the border area. And in the future, I think there is an idea of having some sort of a bonded zone or free trade zone type of arrangement on the border, similar to Korgos on the China-Kazakh border. And that is going to generate quite a lot of traffic, not that is going to the north, but also west to the Black Sea and further to Europe.
Have we any questions from the audience on this topic or on anything else? Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about this idea of the north-south route, because here we are in Dubai. We know that Dubai's put a lot of both sort of intellectual as well as financing, capital and investment into this region, as obviously has China. But what about that route from Dubai to Moscow, and particularly as Iran opens up? Where does that, where is Dubai positioned now in your thinking? I think if we can start with you, Tala, on this.
Obviously, this is going to shift the paradigms, and because opening of Dubai is, opening of Iran is obviously going to shift the economic interest of a lot of countries. And there is, as we see, a lot of interest from American, European countries, Chinese countries who want to move to Iran. And if previously a lot of operations were done through the Middle East, if goods were going to Iran, they would probably arrive in Fujairah or Dubai and then be rerouted to Iran or somewhere in Turkey. Now they can go directly. Obviously, it's going to have direct impact on Dubai, and that's why I think it is an opportunity for the countries like Azerbaijan, which is on the border with Iran. So a lot of countries or investment in the Middle East, will have to reconsider their strategies in the long term vis-a-vis the Eurasian region. So I expect some shifts in their thinking towards Central Eurasia.
Dr. Yu, I'd be interested to hear your perspective on this.
Or without the role, Dubai plays a very important role in trade relations between China and the European countries, and also in Central Asia and Africa, because Dubai is strategically located. It is centrally located in this region. It's been an entrepot center for Chinese goods, which have been shipped from China to Dubai and then transshipped to European countries and to Africa. So Dubai still plays a very important role, and I think the role will continue in the years to come.
I wanted to ask a question actually about the gauge of railways, which sounds very specific, but actually it brings into play a much broader question. Because thinking about opportunities for the future, we do at the moment have a situation where the West and China are on one gauge and the CIS is on and Russia is on another. So the railway lines, everything has to be moved from one railway line to another. Can you foresee a situation where London and Beijing could be linked by a single gauge line? I think, Kanat, that has to go to you first, I think.
Well, even from the current operation, I don't see any kind of significant problem, just to have a kind of smooth operation, as you said, from the east to west and vice versa. Even have a different type of the gauge. I mean, the current technology and operation has allowed us to provide the right services for that. So I mean, it's very costly from the investment perspective, and I don't think that it's going to be some change for the gauge. I mean that during the next decade. I mean.
We've only got a few minutes left to run, and I'd like to look forward, if you will. Tala, looking forward 10, 20 years, if we imagine where we were 20 years ago, Astana, I think, was still on the drawing board. Huge changes have happened already. Do you see the pace of change simply increasing exponentially, and where do you see it going?
So it is actually related to your previous question. It wouldn't far-fetched to think that in the future a tourist from Istanbul would arrive the same day in Azerbaijan, whether using the same gauge or whether using some sort of a tube communication that is being developed now. Obviously, technology is going to have a greater impact on the development of the infrastructure that is going to link most of these large markets and the entire Eurasia. So I personally do not think that it's going to be far-fetched to think that these large markets will be connected with some sort of single system, and there will be no need for changing gauges. So the future, I think it's bright for the Central Asia as well as for Azerbaijan and the countries in Central Europe. The key is to make sure that our strategies go along hand in hand with the developments in the neighborhood, and the key for success is to create a climate which is very prone to invite investment and make sure that their investments and multi-billion-dollar investments are not going to go to wane, and they are secure and there for the long run.
Dr. Yu, I'd like to give the last word to you. Jack Ma has called the development of the Silk Road a new era in globalization. Is the impact that big?
Well, at first, I didn't give it down to it because, you know, I thought the Silk Road initiative would not be so important. But after a second thought, you know, I thought it could be, you know, big for China, for this part of the world, because I checked on the website and read a report written by McKinsey and Company, which was done last year. According to the report, it says that, you know, the total population along the Silk Road region reached 5 billion, including the population in the EU countries. And also the total GDP would amount to 39 trillion US dollars. So that accounts for about 70% and 52% of the world's total respectively. So that's a very large market and also a large GDP. And you know, the report also did some estimation about the multiplier effects of the infrastructural developments and investments in that region, in this region, which says that, you know, every $1 billion of investment in infrastructure will create 30 to 80,000 jobs and will, you know, contribute to more than $2.5 billion of GDP growth. And the report also predicts that by 2050, this region will contribute about 80% of the world's new GDP growth and will create more than 3 billion middle-class people. So I think that's a very big, you know, market. The figure says for itself.
Okay, and on that note, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We've run out of time. It's been a fascinating discussion. I'd like to thank all three of our speakers today, Kanat Alpsbayev, Yu Jianlong, and Tala Ziarov. Thank you all very much indeed. Please do stay in your seats. We have a session on diversification coming up next, which I'm sure you won't want to miss. Thank you all very much indeed.